Good morning, sixth grade. Welcome back to science class. This is such a weird way to do science, but we're making it work. Today's lesson is going to be about the peripheral nervous system. So if you can pull out your PowerPoint that I sent, it's on the RenWeb link. So you go to RenWeb lesson plans and under documents, you should be able to pull up the PowerPoint. If you haven't been able to do that, send me an email or a text and I'll see if I can walk you through what you need to do, okay? But essentially, we're going to be talking about the peripheral nervous system. To review from the last lesson, the central nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord. And we talked about the different parts of your brain having the cerebrum, which is that big part that controls your thoughts and your reasoning and your conscious, essentially your conscious thought. And then the cerebellum is that part in the back, and the cerebellum helps you to keep balanced and stay balanced. And then your brain stem connects your brain to your spinal cord, and then your spinal cord connects to essentially all of the nerves in your body. All the nerves from your fingers to your toes to everything in between will have some sort of neuron that connects or nerve that connects to the spinal cord, and so that those messages can get sent up to your brain. Okay, so today we're going to look at that a little bit more and how that works. So you should see, if you can't pull up the PowerPoint, the pictures are actually in your textbook as well. So take out your textbook and turn to page 340, okay, and you will see there is a picture there of a neuron. Now, a neuron is a special cell in your body. It's one of the longest cells that you can have. It's crazy long. But essentially, a neuron is a cell that has it kind of looks like an alien in a way. It's got like the bigger side where it's got all the little fingers projecting from it. That bigger side is the cell body. That's essentially where like you'll find things like the nucleus and that sort of thing, like the actual cell of it. Okay, so the nucleus is found there. And then it will have a long sort of tail connected to it. And then it's got some little fingers at the end. So we're going to talk about what all those things are and what they do today. Okay? So essentially what these cells do, these neurons, is that they send impulses through the nerves up to your brain. And an impulse is essentially an electrical message that's carried through this neuron. Okay? So when I touch my finger, there are neurons that are sending impulses to my brain saying, you're touching your finger and it feels kind of squishy and it's not really painful because you don't like pain and you're not trying to inflict pain on yourself. Yay! So essentially that is what an impulse is. An impulse is electrical. So when we talked about electricity and whatnot, your body actually has electricity coursing through it. And so that electricity is being sent up to your brain, okay? Now, a couple more things about the shape of that body. So there is the cell body, and then those little finger thingies I told you about, those are called the dendrites, okay? Dendrites receive the impulses from one neuron to the next, and so they sort of pass the message along, okay? Then you've got the tail. The tail is the axon, and surrounding it is this myelin sheath. And the myelin sheath essentially is like a protective coating on it. And some people don't have that protective coating, or their protective coating is damaged, and that causes different diseases. So that protective coating helps the neurons to send messages faster and whatnot, okay? Now, they don't actually, before I talk about that, let's talk about the different types of neurons, because there are a couple of different types of neurons. We have sensory neurons, which is like what I'm doing here, right? Okay? A sensory neuron is a neuron that carries a message from your sense organs to your central nervous system or to your brain. So when I am touching my finger, the sensory neurons in my finger are sending messages up to my brain saying, she's touching her finger, okay? Then there's also motor neurons. And a motor neuron is a neuron that carries a message from your brain to your muscles. So right now my brain is saying, twiddle your fingers. And I'm twiddling my fingers and there they go. So that was my motor neurons working to get my fingers moving. Okay? Now, how do we communicate? Well, there's essentially, between the different neurons, there's a gap, okay? And we call that gap or that space a synapsis, okay? Think S for synapsis, S for space. So it's the space between the dendrite and the axon, okay? And if you look on page 341, it shows a little picture of two neurons kind of being close to each other, and you'll notice there's a space between them. But in between that space, these electrical impulses are being able to be sent. And the video that's in this link, the PowerPoint link, helps to explain that a little bit better. I'll make sure to put it on the S'more page too so that you can get to it. Okay? So that's kind of how they respond to each other. Okay? So your peripheral nervous system kind of has two sections to it. Okay? Just like our central nervous system had our brain and our spinal cord, our peripheral nervous system has two things too. It has your somatic nervous system and your automatic nervous system. So somatic is the one that controls your skeletal muscles. That's the one that's saying, hey, clap your hands, twiddle your fingers, okay? That is my somatic nervous system at work. The opposite of that is my autonomic nervous system. Now think autopilot, you know, things moving and doing things on their own, and that's essentially what your autonomic nervous system does, okay? It literally is the things that tells your heart to beat and your stomach to digest and I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, your lungs to expand and contract, okay? Your autonomic nervous system is always working, getting those different things going and doing the things that they need to do. So keep that in mind. So think of your somatic nervous system as your voluntary muscles, the things you're voluntarily choosing to do, like this, right? I'm voluntarily clapping my hands, giving you a little wave, okay? And then your autonomic nervous system is the involuntary. It's the things I'm not thinking about. I'm not choosing to do them. It just happens, okay? Your autonomic can actually get divided into two sections as well. It can get things like, another thing, like things like yawning, sneezing, that's all autonomic. But your autonomic can actually get divided into two groups too. This isn't in your notes, but it's in your reading, so you can just see that that's there. But it essentially gets divided into your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. Okay, so let's see. I don't know where it talks about that there. Anyways, just don't worry too much about that. That's not going to be on any tests or anything like that. So just know that it gets divided into those two groups. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is a reflex. Reflex, not reflux. A reflex is an action that happens before your brain even has time to think about it. So you touch a hot stove and your immediate reaction is to, move your hand away, right? That's a reflex. Your brain is getting that message before you even have time to think. When you go to the doctor's office, they'll often, here's my knee, they'll often like hit your knee and it will like do this, right? They know exactly where to hit it. And they're checking your reflexes. They're checking to make sure that your brain is sending the right messages to your body. And so that's just one of the things the doctor will do to check on you to make sure that your brain is working properly. And so those reflexes are just actions that happen before your brain can really think about what to do, okay? So some questions to ask yourself. What's the difference between a sensory and a motor neuron? Okay? Remember, sensory is from your sense organs to your brain, and a motor neuron is from your brain to your voluntary actions, okay? What's the purpose of the autonomic nervous system? To keep things running, things that you don't want to think about, okay? It essentially controls all those involuntary actions. And then how are reflexes different than like things that you actually do with your muscles, okay? So think about that. How are those two things different? And essentially it's because your brain's controlling both, but one, your brain doesn't have time to think about a reflex, where it does have time to think about, hey, twiddle your fingers, okay? All right, so your homework for today is in your activity manual. It is your study guide. So it's found on page 227 and 228, okay? It's 2 pages, and essentially I want you to just kind of read through your textbook, pages 340 to 343. Okay, so you're going to do your reading, and then you're going to do your activity manual, page 227 and 228, and then send me an email. Okay? I miss you guys. We can Zoom today. We're going to Zoom today, the Monday, the 23rd at 1 o'clock. So blessings to y'all. Love you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.